This is Gayatri Agarwal, N.S.S. PO, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Raja. You're on mute, sir. Mr. Raja, you're on mute.
When I start, take 35 minutes from there. My phone is with you.
Are we live now?
Yes, thank you for muting me.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry,
Thank you
Mr.
for joining,
Gonsalves,
sir.
we had to make you wait because of technology. The
No
host
problem. No
prevented
problem.
others from unmuting themselves.
No problem. You made me wait only for a couple of seconds.
Yes. So finally, since I couldn't be heard, I had to send a message.
Yes, sir, we are
Listen,
live
you had to
now.
unmute me.
We will
So
have
can we
about
start?
1,300 students attending the session today on YouTube and our Zoom meeting.
So can we start, Rensden?
Yes. Dhanashree?
1 minute, sir, please. So may I request N.S.S. volunteer to make teacher for co-host, please?
Yes.
Dhanashree and Prashant, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir, we can start now.
All right. Start.
Wait.
Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all present over here. And I sincerely hope that each one of you is safe and sound. In this unprecedented situation of the COVID 19 pandemic, I hope that everyone is taking precautions and is keeping good health. On behalf of the N.S.S. unit of K.P.B. Hinduja College of Commerce, I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speaker for the day, Mr. Colin Gonsalves, PCGT trustee, Mr. V.P. Raja, district coordinators, our principal, Dr. Meenu Madlani, vice principal, Ms. Chandrakala Joshi, PCGT coordinator, Ransden sir, our POs, Dr. Nitin Bharaskar and Dr. Gayatri Agrawal, and all our teaching and non-teaching staff. I would like to welcome our dear N.S.S. volunteers for joining us today evening. Today's session, that is Human Rights in India, is organized by N.S.S. Hinduja in collaboration with Public Concern for Governance Trust. PCGT was founded by the late Mr. V.G. Deshmukh, former Cabinet Secretary to the Government of India, along with Mr. Julio Ribeiro, former Mumbai Police Commissioner and Director General of Police Punjab, and Dr. R.K. Anand, pediatrician and former Director, Jaslok Hospital. The basic objective is to strive for good governance in the city of Mumbai. PCGT has initiated the Youth for Governance program to sensitize youth on issues of governance and to develop leadership skills, especially in public activities. It provides a platform for youth to collectively question, discuss, and initiate action on related issues. Youth for Governance program aims at changing the students' perspective towards ethical conduct in whatever profession they or private sector. YFG has various programs like RTI program, PCGT dialogues, and good governance campaigns that mobilize youth and promote issues of governance, sexual harassment, eve teasing, and emerging social concern of the contemporary world. The PCGT dialogues are followed with a series of interactive sessions with eminent personalities with great social conscience. Youth for Governance program helps to build the students' perspective towards ethical conduct and responsible citizenship. I request our PO Nitin sir to address the gathering.
Thank you very much, Honorable Principal Ma'am, Vice Principal Ma'am, Chief Guest of the Day, our Sudhari Puranik Sir, N.S.S team, POs, guys in real sense, and of course, our all the volunteers, those who have joined from the different parts of the Mumbai and Maharashtra. Guys, in real sense, today, we are very much curious to listen from an eminent speaker, Colin Sir. As we know very well, Colin Sir is, of course, the best lawyer, but along with that, he is the best speaker. And guys, I feel today I should not take much time. Rather, it would be injustice if I stand between such a listeners and the speaker. But one thing definitely I will say that we are blessed one. Why we are blessed one? The reason is that, guys, we all have get an opportunity to work under a dynamic leader. So I will not take your much time. Thanks, organizing committee, for giving me an opportunity to speak few words. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our Vice Principal, Ms. Chandrakala Joshi, to address the meeting.
Hello and good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. I, Mrs. Chandrakala Joshi, would like to extend my warm welcome to the speaker for the today's session, Mr. Colin Gonsalves. We are glad to have you, sir, as a speaker for today's event. I would also like to thank PCGT, that is Public Concern for Governance Trust, to collaborate with our N.S.S unit and to organize this amazing session. PCGT has initiated the Youth for Governance program to sensitize youth on issues of governance and to develop leadership skills, especially in public activities. It is the N.S.S volunteers as well as the program coordinators who, with a lot of hard work and enthusiasm, come with such great events. I would like to extend my thanks to all N.S.S volunteers for organizing this event and making it happen today. Now, with no further delay, I once again wholeheartedly welcome all the program officers, district coordinators, and our dear N.S.S volunteers who are present here. Please start and go ahead with today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request our University N.S.S Director, Mr. Sudhir Puranik, to say a few words.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Honorable Mr. Colin, the principal of Hinduja College, Madlani ma'am, Joshi ma'am, my fellow colleague program officers, Dr. Gayatri Agarwal and Mr. Nitin Bharaskar. It always gives me great pleasure to interact with the N.S.S volunteers because you guys are full of blood and you are doing lot many good things that must be appreciated as a university authority by me. Even during this pandemic, you are working for blood donation activity and daily, almost on an average, we are in a position to collect 50 to 60 blood bags per day. That itself is a good number. So I appreciate your efforts. And for the first time, I am seeing such a huge number on Zoom, that 885, that itself speaks of the success of your organization. And to say something about PCGT, I have always loved to attend the sessions organized by PCGT, because something new is always there, and that is very essential thing, that innovation. And like I had an opportunity to attend Julius's lecture also a few days back. So just enjoy the day, get the information, and I will request you to do one thing, that kindly keep a paper and pen ready with you, as I am having with me. I will show it so that you can have good notes of the speaker. Otherwise, what happens? The speaker speaks so nicely, and that all goes away after the meeting within 15 minutes, 40 minutes. So don't do it like this. So keep a pen and paper ready with you. And thank you very much for inviting me and giving an opportunity to address you guys. And I wish all the best for the program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Today, we also have with us Mr. V.P. Raja. After obtaining two postgraduate degrees in physics from Delhi University and Columbia University, Mr. Raja joined the administrative service in 1974. While in service, he completed a MA in Rural Development Planning from the University of East Anglia. He further obtained a master's in philosophy in social sciences from the Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi. As an IS officer of the Maharashtrian category, he has worked in various assignments at the district, state, and center. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to administrative reforms while working as a collector of Satara and as Transport Commissioner Maharashtra, Mr. Raja was awarded the Distinguished Government Administration Award. I request Mr. V.P. Raja to address the gathering.
Thank you very much. The principal, the vice principal, various members of the faculty, our main speaker, Mr. Gonsalves, and I'm also delighted to see a very large attendance. When I press my Zoom platform, I see the number as 917 and many others obviously on the YouTube. So we are very pleased. PCGT, what it does has already been talked about. Now, today is an important day. It's Human Rights Day. And this day is observed every year on 10th December, because it was on this day, 10th December 1948, that the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Something worries me a little, and that is, I was born in 1948. So actually this United Nations Declaration of Human Rights is as old as I am. I'm 72 years age. And this Human Rights Declaration has been translated into all languages. And yet, in these 72 years, the human race has not been able to assimilate it totally. That's a matter of great worry. We do see large instances of discrimination of various kinds. When it comes to India, we have always been witnessing throughout our history, post-independent history also, human right abuses. Of course, some very well-known are always in troubled areas where the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is there. So police and security forces, excesses, which are often brought out by NGOs, including some international NGOs, but the lid is put by whichever is the government in power. Extrajudicial killings, custodial deaths, torture in police stations, and most worrisome, I think about a year ago, when a woman was raped, and obviously an obnoxious act in Hyderabad, the police eliminated 3 people, and for that, most of the citizens praised the police, put flower petals on them, this kind of acceptance of inhuman behavior. Of course, the people who are responsible for the rape must be punished, but they need to be punished following the procedure as laid down by law. You can't take law in your own hands. So, and in recent times in India, I think human rights violations, if we start talking about it, we at least read about 3-4 violations which come even in the newspapers with so much of informal censorship, which is already taking place in the press. Even with that, on an average, 3 or 4 cases come out. So there are things to worry. And the extent of human rights abuses have certainly gone up. Even the constitutional provisions, Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, is not being fully implemented. And we have Mr. Gonsalves. I would like to, along with all of you, also listen. One gets this very, very uncomfortable feeling. Has the Supreme Court also become complicit in many of these matters? So I don't want to stand between you and Colin Gonsalves. So over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Human rights in India is an issue complicated by the country's large size and population, widespread poverty, lack of proper education, as well as its diverse culture, despite its status as the world's largest sovereign, secular, democratic republic. To address upon this issue, we have with us Mr. Colin Gonsalves. He is a designated senior advocate of the Supreme Court of India. He is a B.Tech from Department of Civil Engineering from IIT Bombay. He began working as a civil engineer but was drawn to the law through union work and concerns over labor issues and exploitation for then. He completed his Bachelor of Legislative Law from University of Mumbai. He specializes in human rights protection, labor law, and public interest law. He is the founder of Human Rights Law Network. He has been awarded Right Livelihood Award for the year 2017. I now request sir to address the audience. Over to you, sir. Sir, you are on mute.
You need to unmute, sir.
Thank you all, and thank you for the very warm words of welcome. And thank you, sir, for the last comments that you made. It makes a good beginning for what I'm going to say. I will cover things rather rapidly because time is short, but I will cover many things. And some of the issues will be very controversial. So I'm saying it to you, and I'm saying it to you very plainly, because there is really no time for speaking in diplomatic terms or for obfuscating what is needed to be said. So when the time comes for you to respond, you can also speak as bluntly, whatever agreements or disagreements you may have. But it's important because we are living in that time where things are so serious and the situation has deteriorated so much that there is no time really except for plain speech. I want to start with the farmers' agitation. Many of you are reading it in the papers. But if you were to come to the site and if you were to talk to the farmers, you would realize what a historic and serious agitation this is. You might remember, many of you may not know, that over 1 lakh farmers committed suicide in the Punjab because agriculture had become unviable. And they were not even able to get for their produce the toil and their labor put in. It had become so unviable that they could not pay back the debts to the banks and to the money lenders, and they committed suicide. And there were families with 1 or 2 and sometimes even 3 members of the family committing suicide. What is the main thing that they asked for? They asked that when they produce something, they should get what is called the minimum support price, so that they are not selling it below the cost price. And the government, including the present government, has made such grand promises of acquiring produce at the minimum support price. All these promises and assurances are lies. So the farmers are coming in deep distress, having suffered terribly, losing their lands, many millions of them losing their lands, and getting very deeply indebted, and some of them going to jail because they can't pay back their bank loans. And when that happens, the authorities come and grab their house and grab their tractor and grab their utensils and so on, leaving them destitute. The minimum support price is a very important thing. I want you to keep this in mind. Every country in the developed world supports their farmers, huge subsidies. The whole of Europe subsidizes the dairy farmers. The whole of America subsidizes the grain producing sectors and other sectors. So everywhere in the world, the production of food is not possible unless the state sets in and makes it possible for the farmers to live and at the same time feed the people of the country. But in our country, we have a very cruel attitude. And we are at a time where the big corporations, and I don't need to mention them because you see their names in the newspapers day in and day out, are planning actually to aggregate the land, evict farmers, either forcibly or by making it impossible for them to stay and take over farming as a corporate venture. That will be the end of our farmers forever. So the struggle is a struggle for land. The struggle is a struggle for dignity. The struggle is a struggle for equality. And the struggle is a struggle of the farmers for the right to live. On the urban front, there's a second battle taking place because the central government has started making 4 new laws. Now, you know that 80% of our workers are unorganized. So all the laws that cover organized workers do not cover unorganized workers at all. And if they incidentally cover unorganized workers, those laws are not implemented. But now, in the boldest step taken, and by bold I don't mean good, the most awful steps taken, the central government is preparing to take away all the labor protection given to labor from the time of independence. To take away even the labor courts where disputes were adjudicated. To take away inspections where inspectors would go to the factory and see, do you have health and safety equipment? Are you paying the minimum wage? Are you paying the workers on time, etc., etc.? All those inspections will stop. And the employer will have a field day. There will be nobody to inspect his factory. Are you sending effluent into the Ganga, for example, or into the river and streams? There will be nobody. There'll be no check on the employer at all. And there'll be no check on the employer vis-a-vis his relationship with laborers. Have you victimized the worker? Have you sacked him without giving proper notice? Have you paid retrenchment compensation? Have you closed without the permission of the government? There'll be no check at all. And all labor laws will be withdrawn, and there'll be no protection for labor at all. You cannot imagine, you're probably young students in your colleges and so on. You can't imagine the terrible situation descending on India. I have characterized this as Kala Yuga, a great period of darkness, where misrule is the order of the day, where the Rakshasas take control of society and the forces of good are on the retreat. It's a very dark period, my friends. Laws are being dismantled. Laws that exist are not being implemented. And misrule and violence has become the order of the day. How do I convince you? How do I tell you? How do I convey to you the feelings of anguish and anger that I have? A lot of anger. I struggle to correct it in whatever small way I can. But I feel that anger inside me to really struggle to the best possible extent against a government that has so much power, against a government that uses television and the newspapers, all of whom have become puppets of the central government, except for maybe one or two. The news channels that spout, the fake news of the government. How do we struggle against that? How do we, the people of India and the students of India, struggle against that? Then I want to tell you about how the government is doing something which we never believed possible. I have spent 30 years of my life in the courts fighting for cases on behalf of the poor. Slum demolition, violence against women, Dalit atrocities, disability rights, environmental rights, labor rights, the whole range of cases. And today, my best colleagues, my best friends and colleagues, 5 of them, 6, 7 of them are in jail. Sudha Bharadwaj, I'll give you 1 or 2 examples, was such a fighter for the rights of indigenous people, of tribals. She lived in Chhattisgarh. She didn't care for money. If the tribals couldn't pay, she never asked. She lived moderately in a small house with her daughter. Picked up for sedition. And when she asked, what's the evidence against me? They said, we have recovered a letter. Is it signed by her? No. Is it written by her? Is it in her handwriting? No. That letter is somebody, we don't even know who. The prosecution doesn't know who. Wrote some letter saying, Sudha Bharadwaj is helping the Naxalites. So something to that effect. And she's in jail now for the last 2 or 3 years. Surendra Gadling from Nagpur, a fighter for the rights of tribal people and working class people, in jail. And many, many others now in jail. So now I realize when I come to such a period of my life where I know I've spent 30, 35 years in court, I don't know when it is that somebody is going to come to my office one day and knock on the door and say, Mr. Gonsalves? I say, yes. You're under arrest, Mr. Gonsalves. I said, why? Because you've defended ABC. I said, yes, I have. But there are no Naxalites, Mr. Gonsalves. I said, well, I don't know. Naxalites don't roam around the countryside wearing a placard saying, I'm a Naxalite. I took up their case because their wife was raped. I took up their case because their son was tortured. I took up their case because their father was killed in a fake encounter. What's wrong with that? They said, come with us, Mr. Gonsalves. We'll tell you what's wrong with that. And that is the level of terror in the country. People say Naxalites are terrorists. People say people from Jharkhand are terrorists. People from Chhattisgarh are terrorists. People from Maharashtra are terrorists. The police say this all the time. But in my experience, the class of people who constitute the biggest terrorists in this country are politicians and the police. They are the largest body, in my experience, they are the largest body of organized crime. No control. They can lie as they wish. They can catch you and arrest you and put you in jail as they wish. And if you were in UP today under the Yogi government, they can shoot you to death if they wish. And all that they have to say, oh, he was a dreaded terrorist. He was a dreaded terrorist. He belonged to this faction, K.P.B, this Azadi, that Azadi, this Khalistani, that Khalistani. And the point is, who can check? Who can question them? Who can ask the million-dollar question? Where is the evidence? And in the Delhi riots case, where the victims were the Muslims and the persons arrested by the police are the Muslims, The police come with a 10,000 page charge sheet, which looks very impressive. And they bring it on a trolley as if to show this is the evidence against the accused. But the accused, Mr. Khalid, for example, asks the judge every time, whenever the prosecution says, this is a 10,000 page charge sheet, Your Lordship, we can't begin the case today because going through those 10,000 pages will take me months and months. And the judge invariably says, yes, we don't have the time today. We'll see it after 2 months, and then after 2 months, and then after 2 months. But Khalid is asking a simple question. Out of 10,000 pages, Your Lordship, show me one page that is clinching in respect of my guilt. Show me one page. And the prosecution will hem and haw and Lordship, we need time, we have to go through all the pages, etc. That is the state of justice in our country. And we've come to this situation because over the last, I would say, 15 years, but 10 years particularly, the separation between judges and politicians, judges and government officials have decreased. The independence of the judiciary has declined. And if the judiciary is your only friend in times of trouble, what is the role of the judiciary? To stand up to tyranny. When everybody says something, for judges to say, who is the injured person? Who is the poor person? Everyone is clamoring for you to be put to death. What do you have to say? I am here to listen to the small person. And when the person speaks, to say, I think you're right. Judges don't go by majority rule at all. Judges go by what is right. I think you're right. And I think I'm going to order your release because I don't accept what all these people are clamoring in the newspapers, on the internet, trolling, attacking free speech. I'm not going to accept what they say. And I'm going to tell the government that they are wrong. And what is it called? What is it described? What is this task of a judge? Speaking the truth to power. The task of a judge, the quintessential being of a judge. Anyone can give a judgment on behalf of powerful people. Anyone can give a judgment on behalf of middle class people. But when the court is saying, Mr. Judge, don't do this, we don't agree with this, don't prosecute our people. Like say, you remember that person spread hate speech, right? 3 MLAs and 1 MP of the ruling party at the center. What did he say? Which started the Delhi riots. Desh ke gaddaro ko goli maro salo ko. And then he stepped down from his lecture, went out into the streets, read morchas, goli maro sale ko, goli maro sale ko. And the next day the riots began. Houses were burned, shops were burned, motorcycles and cars were burned, people were killed. Why? Because people in power, at the center, people having enormous power, with the policemen standing at their side when they spoke to the nation, said, Desh ke gaddaro ko goli maro salo ko. And it's hate speech. In the IPC, this is hate speech. It's a heinous crime. And you had a policeman standing by your side who should have caught you by your collar, even though you're an MP or MLA, caught you by the collar and said, indeed, I'm going to take you to the police station and arrest you right away. And for 2 years, we are in the Delhi High Court, trying to get the Delhi High Court make an order that, sir, please arrest him. Here is the video. There's no doubt about what he did. Here is the video. Hate speech. And when people in power are doing it, my dear friends, you are young women and men who knows what your lives are going to be? Because I'm going to indicate that it's not going to be the lives of your parents and their parents. It's going to be a very difficult time because the Indian economy is in ruins. The Indian banking system is in ruins. Your mamas and papas fixed deposits, let me tell you, if we're going to get it back, let me speak for myself, I'm not sure we'll ever get that money back. You have seen cooperative banks collapse. Now banks are going to collapse. And now these same corporate houses that have taken huge loans from the banks and have defaulted, government is thinking of allowing them to start banks. Can you imagine? It's like telling a thief, I'm putting you in charge of all these valuable goods, please look after them. Life ahead is going to be very different, very difficult. And believe me or not, don't believe me, it doesn't matter. I only want that these words should go into your ears and you listen. Because as time passes and as things unfold and you see things happening in society, you will say, let me think about this a little bit. Let me try and understand this. And I say this because very often, can you see me? Can you see me?
Yes, sir, we can see you.
Okay. And I say this because very often, there is no one to guide young people. And with respect, I say this, even parents can't guide. Teachers, many cannot guide. Those who you would look up to in society like politicians and, ministers and so on, you would look up to them to guide. The moral fiber of society has become so tenuous that there is no one to guide you. Or if they guide you, they'll guide you in the wrong direction. And so today, young people in their 20s must think independently. Try and understand and read as much as you can and decide independently as to your course of action. So the independence of the judiciary, which we relied upon to protect us, when the lawyers were arrested, we said, my God, the end is near. When the journalists were arrested, and now in Uttar Pradesh in 2020, 12 leading journalists attacked and threatened with imprisonment, and some of them imprisoned. A leading journalist in Bangalore killed at her doorstep. A leading journalist in Uttar Pradesh again. The Uttar Pradesh government is some government. When I said Rakshasas, I really mean it. Killed a journalist friend of mine by barging into his house. The politician and the police barged into his house, poured acid on top of him and burnt him to death. And his statement was recorded before the district magistrate before he died, and he gave his evidence saying, these are the people who killed me. And the FIR is not registered against him even after 4 years. So that is the journalists. The journalists are coming under attack. Then general society coming under attack from the point of view of sedition. And I want to spend a few minutes on this. All across the country, cartoonists, people criticizing the government. Kishore Chand from Manipur told his chief minister, he was so irritated with what he was saying. He said to him, FO, in a public meeting. Arrested in jail for 1 year before he got himself out. People putting up posters saying we need a revolution in this country. We must do something. Just that. Put up a poster, all arrested for sedition. So I want to say a few words. Because I think in your minds, it is possible that you are thinking that to say something strong against the government is sedition. You are thinking that if I tell a minister, you are corrupt, that is sedition. You are thinking if I say in a public meeting, Mr. Cabinet Minister, you should be thrown out of government, and your government should be thrown out of power. That is sedition. You're thinking. None of this is sedition. None of this is a crime. Freedom of speech and expression has no boundaries except hate speech. And except, and this is now sedition, the real understanding of sedition. When you couple your speech to overthrow a government by use of arms with an overt act of actually using arms. So there's a famous Supreme Court judgment from Punjab, where a Khalistani came on the streets and said, we must take up guns against the state and build an army to have Khalistan, a separate state. He was taken in sedition. But in the Supreme Court, the judge said, Mr. Prosecutor, I know he made the speech, but did he actually pick up a gun and shoot anybody? Did he actually mobilize people and throw bombs and so on? No, sir, he didn't do anything. So how is it sedition? Because sedition under Kedarnath's case, which is the Constitution bench decision of the Supreme Court, requires not just strong words. Strong words is your fundamental right. Remember that. Using strong words. You don't have to be namby-pamby, wishy-washy, saying things very politely, very diplomatically, whom nobody's going to listen to. You can speak very boldly. It's your fundamental right. Must be coupled with an overt act mobilizing people to use force against the state. And there was a case from Kashmir. I forget the name of that case. Kashmiri came on the streets and said, "Hame azadi chahiye. Logo ko ikatta karo. बंदूकें वगैरह वगैरह खरीद लो, बम बनाओ और हम साथ मिलकर सशस्त्र संघर्ष करेगा और आजादी मिलेगा." Again, court said, what did he do? Nothing, sir. And he was released. So remember this message. I want to send you a quick and very meaningful message on sedition. Your right to speak, your right to criticize, your right to say things very fiercely, particularly against government officials, very fiercely, is part of your fundamental rights under 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. Freedom of speech and expression. Now we would imagine the judiciary has gone to the dogs. Not yet. I must not overspeak, if you like. There are many, many judges who are good. There are many, many judges who don't like what is happening. And there are many who have compromised. And we work in the hope that those who want to do good in the judiciary, we can take cases to them. They're waiting for good cases to come, particularly public interest litigation. And I want to request all of you young people here today, when you see injustice around you, try and do public interest litigation. We have offices in all the states, and we'll give you addresses of our lawyers in the states. So wherever you may be, you can contact the lawyer and get some advice and get some guidance as to how to do public interest litigation and fight against the state. On slum demolition, on the treatment of COVID patients, on the quarantine centers and the conditions in the quarantine centers, on food not reaching the people, of hospitals closing their doors to poor patients as they did right through this period of COVID on the instructions of the central government. Take only COVID patients. Poor people suffering from diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, all kinds of crippling diseases capable of bringing death, but not kept in the hospitals. Food for the Anganwadis was stopped in Maharashtra and right across the country. Can you imagine pregnant women, lactating mothers, children 0 to 6 years, not getting food for 9 months? And that brings me to the angle of food and the right to food. India has become proud India. culturally superior India, glorious past, great forts, lovely dresses, beautiful music, great poetry, great culture. We have become shamelessly the hunger capital of the world. We have more hungry people in India than the whole of sub-Saharan Africa put together, numbering about 60% of the population. 600 to 700 million people. Let's take a conservative estimate, 500 million people living in hunger. Children going to bed hungry day after day. And as I saw in the villages of UP where we went for a fact-finding, children getting up in the morning, seeing that their father was crouched on his haunches, realizing that their father has no work today, going to the well, pulling out the water, drinking the water, filling your stomach, and just lying quiet. Children in rural India don't complain. They don't cry. Hunger is so integral a part of their life. If they get some food, they will smile, but they don't cry. Because suffering is part of their psyche from the day they are born. The right to food. And this government which talks so much and they have so many schemes. This government is releasing scheme after scheme. Hide the past with the declaration of a new scheme. Then when people say, but sir, you've not implemented the scheme. PDS grain is not available. This 5,000 rupees that you're supposed to spend to a pregnant woman or lactating mother so that her baby can survive is not being paid, sir. Oh, no, don't worry. We've announced a new scheme and a new scheme and a new scheme. The right to hunger. So when the world did a categorization of countries in terms of food security, out of 117 countries, India ranked 110. Bangladesh way ahead, Pakistan way ahead, Afghanistan also way ahead. Afghanistan, which has seen wars and up way ahead. Nepal, long way ahead. Sri Lanka, long way ahead. So a country with guns and bombs and army and waging war and struggling here, struggling there. But a country with dying people. And you know what happens to a child who doesn't get food? 17% of the population, extreme malnourishment. Shrunken brains, stunted body. No cure after that. You don't get your food, your brain shrinks, your body gets stunted. There is no cure after that. So what are we doing? We're bringing into world 17% of the population. Fatally disabled. What kind of governance? What kind of country? And then let me ask rhetorically, is this government, are these governments, let us say, to give a veneer of political neutrality to my talk, are these governments not worse than the British? Jallianwala Bagh happened and the British cashiered General Dwyer, removed him from the army in disgrace. We have killings in our country galore. FIR will not be filed. The levels of malnutrition at the time of independence. We have surpassed those levels of malnutrition and stunting and so on. Surpassed all those. So what do we do? Just as we had a massive uprising against the British, has the time come that we should have an uprising against these governments? Government A or government B or government C, who don't care for the rights of the people, who don't care for the rights of the poor, who carry on regardless. Every minister becomes rich, all their children go abroad, they have houses here, houses there, property here, property. And we talk about corruption, but this is the state. And so, my dear friends, I have so much to say, but I don't know. And now love jihad. This I must tell you because you are young. So hate speech by the government and now love jihad. Do you know what the law, what the new act says? We've challenged that. The new act says, we understand, if you get married by coercing somebody to change, to convert, that's not law. That's old law. Can't be done. You can't, coercion can't. But you fall in love, and out of love you convert, let us say. There's no coercion in it. Somebody may say, okay, I'll convert and become a Muslim. Somebody will say, okay, this, that, and the other. Some will say, don't convert, we'll still get married. You can't get married if you are people from different religions. You can't get married out of love. This is Yogi. Yogi doesn't understand. He understands hate. Hate, 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 kill, 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 arrest, beat. They're loving each other. Let's say a Muslim and a Hindu loving each other, they get married. You can't. That's the new law. I mean, it'll be set aside, I'm sure. You can't get married. What must you do? You must go to the district collector and tell him, sir, we are getting married. And look, there's a privacy judgment, Putta Swami case, Putta Sami case. Right to privacy, fundamental right. You have no business interfering with my personal things. Who I get married to, what I do with, person, whether I convert. None of your business. That's the judgment of the Supreme Court. Super judgment. Remember the name, Putta Sami. Putta Sami 1, Putta Sami 2. 2000, I don't remember the year. 17, I think. So you go to the collector. Collector will order a police inquiry into whether you are getting married by coercion or getting married by voluntarily. How does it work? On the face of somebody say, so what? Inquiry will take place. First of all, why should inquiry take place? Hindus and Muslims have been marrying for decades and decades, in their hundreds and their thousands, tens of thousands maybe. You never had police inquiries and so on. I can understand. If it's force and conversion, somebody can go and protest, go to court. Police inquiry. And we've seen it. The moment the moment the collector gets a notice that so-and-so A is going to marry so-and-so B, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, he will call up the local RSS Shaka. The love jihadis, self-appointed protectors of the public. And they will go to that person's house and make their lives so miserable, beat them, scare them, vilify them, that they'll be forced to discontinue that marriage. On paper, it might look benign, but the real reason is to tell like Hitler had these groups, tell them that couple is getting married, that couple is getting married. That's a jihadi, this is a jihadi, that's a jihadi. Go and make their lives miserable. And my friends, I think I've run out of time. Do I have a few minutes left or is the time up? I can stop a minute.
You can continue, sir.
5 minutes more, all right?
Yeah, sure.
Now I want to talk about environment. Central government has a pet project. It's called the Char Dam Project. The 4 main roads going up to the Char Dams were simple roads. Going up, you go slowly, and you go up and so on. And then suddenly somebody thought religion is good business. Religion is deadly business in India. Millions of people will come. So why not make the Char Dams a commercially viable thing? So some really crazy person who has access to our powers that be, said, sir, we'll make Char Dam, these roads, highways going up mountains. So the SUVs can go 2 on this side, racing up 70 miles an hour and 70 kilometers an hour, they'll go racing up, and 2 will come down, racing down. So the whole of the Himalayas, where once the sages and the holy people walked on foot, on mud roads, meditated, And that was the beauty of India, the greatness of India, its spirituality. Now you'll have so going up and down, increasing the temperature of the Himalayas by 2 degrees. And 2 degrees is a disastrous climate change. First of all, you have tarred roads. So they are like a electric rod going up the Himalayas, heating up the Himalayas. And then you have the exhaust from all these cars. 2 degrees will end the Ganga, will kill the Ganga. This cabinet which talks about Ganga, Ganga meri maa hai. What liars, what fraudsters. When the winter precipitation will stop, because cars are going up and down, temperature has risen. When the winter precipitation stops, the snow stops. In summer, the snow, melting of the snow stops. The Ganga will come down. My dear friend, it is today. I go to an ashram in Uttarkashi. So I know personally, there are places where the Ganga looks like a tiny little stream. There are places where it's totally dried up. You can see the bed of the Ganga. Our great Ganga, Ganga Ma, who feeds the nation, who gives water to the nation, is dying. And I'll stop here, my dear friends. I have so much to say, but I generally have too many points and not enough time to say it. And now you have the vaccine. I'll end with this. I promise to end with this. Now you have the vaccine. Look at it very carefully. The corporations are giving you a big hype. The newspapers have followed suit. The media channels are also following. Huge money to be made by some unscrupulous corporations. And I want you to go on the internet and look at vaccine resistance and movements throughout the world today and see what they're saying. Educate yourself. I'm not saying anything, or somebody may come and hang me for saying what I did. I'm not saying anything. Look at it. But look at the way, and I'll end with this, look at the way they treated that man who got permanent brain damage when he took the vaccine. Vilified him, threatened him with a suit. The Drugs and Cosmetics Act expects adverse reactions. But what does it require the company that manufactured the vaccine to do? To immediately go, rush to the aid of that volunteer. Look after the volunteer, insure the volunteer, give them compensation, give them money, and find out the cause. Is it too dangerous to do again on others? But what did this vaccine Charlie do? Vilified him. Didn't go to meet him. Didn't go to say, what happened to you, sir? And came out with news reports saying, this has nothing to do with the vaccine. How do you know? You haven't even met the man. You've not even conducted tests on him. How do you know? And that, I want to end on that. It is deeply troubling that when the law requires that all adverse events are documented meticulously, so that a genuine ethical manufacturer is made aware that, hey, there's something wrong here. Before the public starts dying and getting brain damage and so on, if I feel it's wrong, I must stop distributing and using these vaccines. Instead of which, what do you have? I think you have, in some cases, a very greedy, unscrupulous, unethical use of things. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm worried. I'm troubled. And when you look at the views expressed all across the world by doctors, you can make up your mind one way or the other. And so, my friends, I stop here now. Thank you very much for being patient. And I think I've overstepped my limit. And I want to tell you, I'm very grateful for being called here today. Mr. Ribeiro, who also put in a word, is greatly admired by us all. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We really enjoyed listening to you and the issues you had to talk about. So if you allow, we can now then move towards the question answer session, because I am sure that many of us have questions to ask to you. So I'll request everyone to put their questions in the chat box and I'll read them out to sir. I have enabled the chat box for you. So sir, here's the first question for you, which is about the issue you talked about, love jihad thing. The government can't pass the bill without approval of Supreme Court. So why does Supreme Court permits this type of regulations to be made related to marriages?
Well, there's nothing like that. No government requires permission of any court to make an act. It's a separate, the legislature is a separate and independent body. The court is a separate and independent body. They can make the most horrible laws. Then the Supreme Court has a right to judicially review those laws and quash them as being unconstitutional. So in India, we have the supremacy of the Constitution, not supremacy of the people. Remember that always. In a democracy, it is not the supremacy of the people. It is not the rule by majority, which you are told time and again. You must understand this. Just because you're majority, you're not right. Whether you are right or wrong will depend on what the Constitution says. Remember that. So the court is the articulation of what the Constitution says. So supremacy. So you make a law independently, and like you've made a law here, now we've all challenged that law, and we've gone to court to say, declare the law unconstitutional. What is the point? What is the great constitutional argument? We have Article 21, the right to life. Can there be life without love? Therefore, Article 21 means the right to love. Therefore, the right to love is a fundamental right. Simple. It doesn't need a great jurist or a very senior lawyer, profound arguments. If life, the right to life, is a fundamental right, love is part of that. And everyone who says hate is acting against the national interest. These are persons who are hostile to national unity. Deshtrohis, we say, right? Who is the Deshtrohi? When love is uniting people and you spread hate, I would say these are the biggest quintessential Deshtrohis. These love jihadis, the biggest Deshtrohis that the country has. Simple as that.
A chat box is floating with questions, so everyone is very curious. I'll move to the next one. They want to know your view on the recent death penalty for rape.
See, I'm opposed to death penalty per se. Totally. No matter what. Shall I tell you why? Because the Supreme Court has given us an answer in Swami Shraddhananda's case. See, death sentence sometimes meant 10 years at some stage. Then it meant 14 years. It was interpreted like that. 14 years. Then it meant 20 years. Swami Shraddhananda says, as an alternative to death, we will, by judicial lawmaking, say life imprisonment up to death. Earlier, you took away life, you hung a person. Why? Because after 10 years, he'll come out. After 14 years, he'll come out. After 20 years, he'll come out. Then he'll harass them again. And I spoke to many people in TV programs who were there with me on the opposite side, opposing what I was saying. Families of victims who were killed. I said, madam, when you spoke in the television program, you said he will come out after 14 years. We don't want him coming out. We are scared. He should be put to death. I said, madam, if you understand today, let me just tell you. I understand your grief, but let me just tell you. It's changed now. He will remain behind the bars till the end of his life. And madam, 30 years in jail, 20 years in jail. is as severe a punishment as hanging him in a second. What do you think now? And many families of death, families of persons who were killed, said, we didn't know that, Mr. Gonsalves. Let us think about it. But if I know that he will be there till the end of his life, I may not say what I said today. And I said, Madam, I'm happy with that. I just want you to think about it. It's a valid, viable alternative to death. My belief is, like the story of Buddha and that Angulimal. And this I've seen. Almost anyone can be reformed. Almost anyone can be reformed. And if you can't be reformed, in any case, you will stay in jail till the end of your life. And I've seen worse than death. You die every day in that jail. And if revenge is what we want, which is not what we want, really. Not what we want. I saw, for example, the death sentence given to those killers of Rajiv Gandhi in that bomb attack. I represented one of those persons. When I went to jail to meet him, and I was saying, no death sentence. When I went to jail, the jail superintendent comes up and says, sir, and he was crying, he had tears. Sir, you saved this man. I said, why? He's got death sentence. You save him, sir. He's my best prisoner. He's teaching everybody computers. He's teaching everybody English. He's drafting all the petition. He's my model prisoner, sir. I said, sir, you give me a letter saying that and we'll show it to the court. Almost anyone. It's like Buddha, who saw in Angulimal a dreaded killer. He saw the soul in the person. Atma. Indestructible. The absolute. The spiritual thing about. And we Indians understand that well. Hinduism understands it beautifully. The absolute inside. So there's an alternative. So I always say, know that. Know that. And I want all of you to say, the other alternative is good enough. The alternative to the death sentence. God gave life. God will take life. No human being has the right. No judge. Nobody has the right to take life.
Sure, sir. We took some questions before the meeting.
Recording.
Yeah, sir. So we took some questions before the in the registration form. So I'll just read out two of them. So first question is, where and when human rights don't work?
Where human rights doesn't work?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where human rights doesn't work. It works everywhere.
Okay.
Even with dictators and tyrants like Pinochet, the Australian, the Argentinian killers, the military killers. In Manipur, where they did 1,250 fake encounters, Supreme Court ordered CBI investigation, and now the trial is beginning of those who did the killing. It can work anywhere. It is the future. It's like a bright light at the end of a dark tunnel. It's possible. But it needs superhuman effort. It means every single human being must say, we don't want this kind of history of our civilization, of hatred, of beating, of discrimination, of sexism, of racism. We don't want. We want a new world. We want a new life. And all of you who are in your 20s and 30s, you can make that new life. It's incredible what human beings can do to change the world. It's incredible. But it needs you to step out of your comfort zone. Your, mamas and papas will look after you and look at your future and plan your future and do this and do that. You have to come out of your comfort zone. You have to leave, in many cases, your families behind. And like a true yogi, you must go out into the world and understand the suffering of people. Experience that suffering. Then you will realize the acquisition of a Mercedes-Benz or a stupid hi-fi washing machine and so on, not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is far higher. And that you, an ordinary person getting ordinary grades in college, your absolute inside you is capable of making you such a stupendous person. You can transform yourself, you can transform individual, you can transform the country, you can transform the world. You have it in you. And if you're an Indian, you'll understand this very well. You have it in you to change the world and do unbelievable things. Prophets of change, all of you young people. Prophets and revolutionaries for change.
Sure, sir. There's one more. Okay, I think.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. I am myself Professor Dr. Khyati Vora from Hinduja College, sir. So it was really overwhelming listening to you and knowing the other side of the story. Even we are the learners, as you are aware that we keep learning new things, and learning from a learned person like you was great thing. Sir, I had one query. I remember maybe 1.5 years back, we were putting something on human rights. There was some anti-social elements in our area, and we wanted to inquire whether they are actually from the human rights. I hope you are aware nowadays there is a lot of extortion happening on the name of human rights, and there are fake human rights association happening. So, and I used to teach human rights for 2 years in my college, so I had some idea. So what I saw in the government website, so there were no officials available on the Human Rights Commission. And most of the time, if I'm wrong, please correct me, the retired judge or the learned advocates are the officers on the place on the higher Human Rights Commission of India. But sir, we couldn't get it. At that time, many posts were vacant, so there was nobody whom I can really contact and write down. I had write this letter to several parties, right from PMO to the police and to Human Rights Commission. To the right person, sir. So can you guide us how can we go about if any of my student or if I want to write down something to them, how can we go ahead?
I'll tell you, madam. For the last 15 years, the head of the Human Rights Institution, this National Human Rights Commission, is a retired judge. Is a retired judge who has no competence, no interest in human rights, no inclination in human rights, and no aptitude to take the government to task. Human rights means against the government. Government is doing something wrong, government is doing something. So what do you do if you have a high ex-chief justice of the country who has no interest in human rights? Doesn't care. There's some cosmetic thing here and there. There's some seminar, workshop. Hathras case happened. Rape of a woman. Silent. Killings in Manipur. Silent. Killings in Kashmir. 30,000 people killed. Silent. So the National Human Rights Commission, a judge is chosen to head that, who is basically very friendly with the government he is supposed to take to task. Nothing possible. So they kill the commission.
Correct.
They kill the commission.
Correct,
So madam, I would suggest you don't waste your time there. Don't waste your time there. There are many human rights organizations in the country. Yes. All kinds. Women's organizations, children's organizations, disability groups. Join them, work with them, strengthen them. Always with one thing in mind: struggle for justice. Struggle for justice. Have no hope in the system. Have no hope that a minister will help you, some administrator will help you, some collector will help you. Nobody will help you. This is the time of Kali Yuga. Nobody will help you. You have to help yourself, organize, and organize militantly, firmly. Not docilely, meekly, giving nivedan, giving letter, giving request. Sir, please help us. No, these are our rights, sir. We want this. You are the hope for India if you organize like that.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Sir, can I ask a question? I mean, if you allow.
Of course.
Yes, sir. I'm a professor in the Hinduja College. Sir, my question is also in continuation with the Khyati ma'am. Sir, it is a very enlightening session, of course. I mean, indeed, it's a very enlightening session. And sir, being a PO, many N.S.S students are messaging me that, sir, please ask the sir if we are interested. I mean, if you want to work in the human rights, how would sir guide us on that? So kindly please light on a kind of guidance or maybe direction to our youngsters, those who are very much interested to work for the human rights. Thank you, sir.
See, what you can do is you can send me an email. The college has my email. The organizers of this program have my email. Colin.Gonsalves@HRLN, Human Rights Law Network.org. Colin.Gonsalves@HRLN.org. Write to me. I won't be able to help all of you, but I will put in each state, I will put you in touch with groups that are working so that you can approach them and say, I'd like to volunteer, I'd like to learn more, and they will help. Not difficult.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Khyati ma'am and Nitin sir. We will now move ahead with other questions. So there's one question. Why do some groups require special human rights? Does this mean that they have more rights than others? And how can I defend my rights?
You're talking about reservation, right?
That's what was mentioned in there. I don't know.
But you're basically asking about that. Why should reservation be there?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, but you need to get into this in a little bit of detail. I'm not able to do that now, but basically, the statistics in the country, which have remained steady for the last 6 decades, shows that particular groups suffer untouchability. So Dalits, for example, suffer untouchability. And has it gone down over these 50, 60 years? In fact, the evidence will show that untouchability has increased. Not allowed to access a well, not allowed to swim in the river, have a bath in the river, not allowed to get into certain places, right? Abuse in the name of caste, burning of villages, stealing of cattle, cutting of trees, raping of Dalit women. If you look at the evidence as gathered right across the country, year after year, it shows that acts of atrocities and acts of discrimination against Dalits as a group because of their caste. I don't like it. I hate it when I hear our country, is like that. But the evidence is overwhelming. Nobody disputes this. And that as a result of this, it's not a level playing field, right? When you try to get into educational institutions, when you try to get into employment in the government, the head of all institutions is overwhelmingly upper caste. The heads of the government, employment in government is overwhelmingly upper. If you look at the Group A, Group B officers, and if you look at the general statistics in India. So like it or not, it's a country which is deeply discriminatory and the field is tilted. How do you bring them up? Through reservation. Some people hate, some people love, but there's a logic in it. To bring them up, they need that. So what do? You get a 5% relaxation. When minimum standards are there, you get a 5% relaxation. And in order to avoid misuse for the OBC category, you have a creamy layer, which is if your income is above a particular layer, there's no question of reservation. It's a rough and ready kind of approximation, but studies show that it has worked to try and reduce discrimination between the Dalits and the upper caste. Has it helped? Yes, but not much. Despite this, so you can imagine if reservation was not there, they would be wiped out in education and employment. All the seats would be taken by the others. And even now, when you look at the statistics and all, you'll find that the seats that are filled is across the country, maybe something like 50 to 60% of the seats available. So those seats are being grabbed invariably with assistance from the top by people who are non-Dalit. And for tribals, there's no argument at all. The 7.5% for tribals, outcast of the world. And Supreme Court judgments now in the last 3-4 years. It is lamentable that although we have had so many years of independence, atrocities against Dalits are on the rise, discrimination is on the rise, violent acts are on the rise. Untouchability, Prevention of Untouchability Act, Article 17, Section 17, Article 17 of the Constitution. Untouchability in all forms are banned. Begar, forced labor, bonded labor. In my office, our people are rescuing bonded labor every day from different parts of the country. Bonded labor going up, slavery going. Can you imagine a country which had a 7% GDP growth rate? Economic tiger. But look at the social indices. Untouchability going up. I mean, come on. Look at the whole of the developed world going up, getting rid of racism, trying to get rid of racism, discrimination, violence. And our country is going deeper and deeper into it. It's a contested question, but I could introduce you to people, introduce you to papers, make up your minds for yourself. But I suspect because you come from privileged backgrounds of some kind, these arguments may at first blush appeal to you. That maybe I'm not getting this because somebody else with lower marks is getting it. That's right. There's a relaxation. In Delhi University, 5% relaxation. So they don't do badly. They don't do too badly. They do less than you and they get in. But that's the way you balance discrimination in the world.
That surely enlightened us a bit, because yes, this is a question wherein not everyone will agree. So, and yes, it's true, we are living a privileged life than most of the people in the country. So
little introspection is needed. Little looking at ourselves is needed. Look at our homes, look at our families. What is our caste? What is our class? And then try and come with some of the groups. Go to the Dalit bastis, go to the Dalit areas where they live. See, if you're living in Mumbai, I think, isn't most of you?
Yeah.
Go to the scavenger colonies. I'll introduce you to the scavenger unions. You'll get such a shock you'll never imagine. You can never imagine that human being. And how many? 20,000, 30,000. Eating their food on top of the garbage heaps. Their lungs filled with poison because the garbage heaps secrete methane gas. Their eyes weakening because, you know, the gas from those garbage heaps eats into the mucus of the eyes. The little children playing on that. I mean, what is this? We are proud Indians. We know that our country is a great country. We know our country can be the greatest country. But not greatness of guns and all that sort of stuff. And not false greatness of look our wonderful saris and our wonderful costumes and look at our weddings and look how they dress and look at all that and look at the players and all that sort of tabla players. We don't want that kind of greatness. We want greatness when people live at peace. Simple. Simple houses, simple food, simple clothes, simple aspirations. Live at peace. That's greatness. Not this false greatness that we Indians are so proud of. And can we be the greatest country in the world? Of course. Greater than anybody. Philosophically, we have it with us. No. Spiritually, we have it. We know the learnings. From the time we're little babies, we are taught about spirituality. We are taught about the absolute. We are taught about dharma. We're taught. We know. We don't follow. We don't feel it. We become so, you know, westernized. We don't feel it. We don't feel our spirituality. We don't go like our sages used to go. And this is a must for everybody. Retreat from the world. Go to areas far away, away from this noise. See how the common people live. See how the Dalits live in villages of India, always separate. Go to their houses. Stay there. Stay in tribal houses. Eat how they eat. Watch how they work. See how they live. See how generous they are, that when you go to their house, there will be not a grain in their houses, not one grain. And yet they will send their little girl out to buy, maybe 2 rupees of milk, and she'll come back with milk and give you tea. The greatness of India. Inconquerable greatness of India. But you must go out. You all are too protected. Too protected. This love that your parents bestow on you is not good for you. Go out, break free. When I left IIT, I was first an IIT engineer, then I became a lawyer. I just went out into the country. I went out where the labor unions were striking, where the agricultural workers were doing this, where people were being killed. I was a trouble seeker. You all must go out where trouble is happening. Go to this agitation of the farmers. Set up a tent, a Hinduja tent, Hinduja College tent. Set up a tent and just stay there for a week. Move around, interview people, take it as a project, take a video with you, take it as a project. भाई साहब आप फार्म लॉज के खिलाफ क्यों है? ये MSP क्या चीज है? मोदी सर कहती है कि ये फार्मर के लिए अच्छा है, आपका क्या कहना है? Do a project and come back. It will transform your lives. Transform your life. Better education than a year in school, in college. Far better. So break free. These are chains that bind your mind. Education is a chain which covers your mind, makes you incapable of thinking. You'll read your book, you'll read that, question answers, talk questions, talk answers. Base your education on the stark reality of India. And India has so much to offer you in terms of education. I have an 8-year-old daughter. She's studying in Uttar Kashi in an ashram. Homeschooling. She goes to the Ganga in this winter. She goes to the Ganga and goes into the water and comes out shivering. Papa, Papa, towel, Papa, towel. Climbing the mountains, listening to the gurus. 8 years old. Break free. You have no choice, otherwise you'll not survive in the world.
Mr. Gonsalves, can I ask you a few questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One is something which has been worrying me. All senior functionaries, starting from the Prime Minister, cabinet ministers in the center, the states, all senior officers, everybody takes an oath to the Constitution, solemn oath of office. But when you violate that oath, is there a remedy? Has a PIL ever been tried on senior functionaries blatantly violating the oath to the Constitution? That's number one. Number two, is there a remedy if the senior law officer of the government makes a statement before the Supreme Court or High Court, knowing it is wrong? To give an example, no migrant worker is on the road at 11 o'clock as of today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Totally wrong. False statement.
Is there a punishment for it?
Yes.
Can an issue be made out of it? Because it brings disgrace to the profession also.
Yes, sir.
Number three, Justice Muralidhar's overnight transfer. Assuming that he got a warrant from the president asking him to move, is it really necessary for him to move overnight without waiting for the instructions which he gave the previous day to be complied with? In the administrative service, when we get orders, we don't necessarily hand over immediately. And some of my subordinates, when they got orders, I at least have one or two instances where I've told them, I will relieve you only after you do these things. I'm not going to relieve you immediately. So why did Justice Muralidhar move overnight? Related to that is, doesn't it send a kind of a message to the rest of the senior judiciary that this is how I could be treated if I don't fall in line? That's also.
Yes, sir. The first was the oath of allegiance to the Constitution and so on. Standards have fallen so low in our society today. Standards of judging have fallen so low that today to catch a person for wrongdoing, even patent wrongdoing, has become a difficult task. So lying is the order of the day. Misleading the court is the order of the day. Saying things that are false and deliberately knowing that they are false, you say them, is the order of the day. This is the period of Rakshasas. And you have Rakshasas within our legal system also. Is there a remedy? Yes, there is, but it cannot be at a general level that he took an oath to office. He took an oath and he's not following it. But you must catch the officer at specific points. Corruption, abuse of power, lying. You have to catch the officer at specific points. You can't go generally on the basis that he has an allegiance to the Constitution of India. You'll have to catch him on the specific points. And there are many. They all leave a trail behind of abuse of power. You can catch him on that. You can take him to court. In Justice Muralidhar's case, it is contempt of court. And I think I made a mistake because that was my case. I made a huge mistake. When that happened, I should have taken out a contempt of court case in the Supreme Court. That transferring him like this is contempt of court. Interference, I missed it. I regret it. I really regret that I didn't take out contempt of court. But are judges interfering all the time? Are executives, are our politicians interfering all the time? I remember Arvind Kejriwal in the Delhi High Court at the time of the 50th anniversary of the Delhi High Court. In front of Chief Justice Amit Shah, all these dignitaries and all the judges of the High Court, he said, "What is this I hear?" In his speech, he said, "What is this I hear? The government is tapping the phones of judges and they are scared." So these things are happening now. It's a very difficult time. It's a sharp decline in our civilizational values. And truly, it's the time of the rule of criminals. High functionaries with high positions, grand uniforms, grand presence, speaking authoritatively, coming on television day in and day out, photographed in the newspapers day in and day out. But criminals, all amassing wealth for themselves and their families, breaking the law routinely. The higher you go, the greater the disregard for law.
I just saw a few days ago, I think on the net, the Supreme Court of the United States on an appeal filed on the Pennsylvania judgment of Donald Trump's elections. A single line judgment. It's denied. And all the three judges were appointees of Donald Trump.
Yes, sir. That's because that's an extreme case. But the Supreme Court of the United States is a shadow of its former self. Full of compromise. Full of...
in spite of that, in this particular case,
yes, sir. Because this
they did not tilt in favor of Donald Trump.
No, correct, sir. But there's not too much to be read in this because Donald Trump's suit was such an exaggeration, such a useless suit, that even if he had appointed you, you still can't do anything because it's such a useless case, you can't do anything. It should not be taken as a sign of the Supreme Court doing something smartly, quickly, fast, good. No, no, no. It's an average court with very average values, sometimes terrible values. Look at Guantanamo Bay. You torture people. You torture people on land which is part of the USA. A certain area of Cuba is demarcated as land under the jurisdiction of the United States of America. And it takes 5 years for you to deal with that matter. 5 years with all the photographs of torture. In India, if we had things about torture, let's say of Indians in some wherever, by the Indian government involvement in some way, it would have taken us 5 days to get into the Supreme Court and be heard. So it's not a very good court. It's not a very American presidents appoint judges, no? American presidents appoint judges, and these judges stay till the end of their life. And American presidents, they lose the election, they're getting out, and they appoint a judge who's going to be there for 30 years. What kind of justice is that? What kind of constitution is that? Why should a president appoint judges? South Africa, there's a judicial commission consisting of eminent people who appoint judges. Why should a president appoint judges? The man who's so rotten will ultimately put a chief justice into position for 30 years. He'll be dead and gone, buried 6 feet deep. And his close friend will be adjudicating on human rights. It's totally wrong.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I have so many questions in the chat box, and I feel so bad that we can't take those questions, but we have to respect everyone's time here. You two took time out for us. So I'll just ask one last question: that what is that one thing that you want to tell us, the youth of this country, regarding any one thing that you want to communicate with us?
What Ambedkar said. I think I forget the exact phrase: educate, organize, liberate, something like that. Be revolutionaries, try to find your true self. Be revolutionaries. Understand that you are the leadership of the country 20 years down the line. You will be, in some way or the other, in education, in technology, in politics, in journalism, in art. Don't listen to the old at all. Don't listen to the old. It's a good thumb rule. It's not that old people are all bad. But don't listen. Have a strong policy. Think for yourself. And when everybody gangs up and says something, particularly when they are powerful people and influential people, think twice. Don't be impressed by uniforms. Don't be impressed by position and rank. Don't be impressed by grand parades and grand this and don't be. Mahatma Gandhi said, look into the eyes of the poorest person you have met. That's what you have to learn to do. Your vision must change. Your vision came up of privilege. So you see the world, your eyes see the world through the eyes of privilege. Your vision must change. And you must be able to see the world through the eyes of the working people. Everyone will castigate you. I got my IIT degree and I worked for 20 years. 20 years in trade union movement, in slum dwellers movements. I was paid 5,000 rupees a month. I started with 500 and I was paid 5,000 rupees. I didn't have proper clothes to wear. I couldn't travel by auto. When my parents and my family saw me, they noticed many things about my poverty-stricken condition. But I was the happiest person in the world. And those were the happiest days of my life. Because I managed to find the soul inside me. I don't care. I didn't care. All my colleagues went to Berkeley and then they had houses with swimming pools, and I went to them and said, can you give me a donation? And they told me, no, we don't agree with your perspective. You're not supporting this government. We are very disappointed in you, Colin. You must find yourself, then you get the confidence. It doesn't matter what clothes you wear. It doesn't matter what office you have. It doesn't matter what car you drive. You have found yourself. You must find yourselves. It's very hard. And it's very easy. It's very easy. You must not hanker for things that other people have. These are superficial things of the world. You have far greater things to achieve. You are capable of ascending to spiritual heights that will take you to the heavens. Why should you settle for these stupid accessories of life? They will come. The strange thing is, they come after years of hard work without greed. They come to you in any case. People say, this is a good person, this is a good woman, she works very hard, she hasn't tried to cheat us. And they come and give you small offerings, which when they accumulate is a big offering or decent offering. You have to reorient your lives. Try, it's not difficult. Difficult in some ways, but not difficult. Reorient. And in India, you're full of people of wisdom. The gurus, the persons doing all kinds of work. You have so many people.
Thank you so much, sir. And now I'll hand over to our program officer, Dr. Gayatri Agarwal, ma'am. Ma'am, over to you.
Yes. I, Dr. Gayatri Agarwal, N.S.S. Program Officer, on behalf of Hinduja College, would like to thank our guest speaker, esteemed guest speaker, I would say, Mr. Colin Gonsalves, for enlightening us with his knowledge. Today's webinar was full of knowledge, and sir, it was indeed an awareness session about human rights. It gave us a deeper understanding into the topic and also revealed some interesting and truly facts that will definitely help us in future. I express my sincere gratitude towards University Director Mr. Sudhir Puranik, sir, Mumbai City N.S.S. Coordinator Dr. Satish Kolte, sir, for their constant support and guidance, and to all other district coordinators to promote our event. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our principal and vice principal for giving us permission to organize this webinar, and special thanks to NGO PCGT for collaborating with N.S.S. Hinduja. A sincere thanks to teaching and non-teaching staff for sparing valuable time and attending this event. I would also like to thank our N.S.S. unit. So they really worked very hard to make this event successful. I also like to thank to all students, volunteers from Mumbai city and to all other districts, colleges affiliated to University of Mumbai to present here for and paying attention and for sincere learning. Thank you once again, everybody. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. May I request, if you tape recorded, if you video recorded it,
Yes.
can I request for a link?
Yeah.
Sir, I will send it to you on your email, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was really an enlightening session. It was great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be circulating a feedback link in the WhatsApp groups which we formed, and you can fill it from there.
Also inform about the certificates, Dhanashree.
Yes, as in the number is great, so we'll require some time to process the certificate, but you will get your certificates within a week.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Raja.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, sir.